Hello and welcome to this advanced tips and tricks guide for Manor Lords. Here's 10 really useful things that you can do in your next game. A great tip if you're looking to make some money in the early game is building a trade post and selling shoes and warbows. Shoes can be exported for 8 each, which I think is really good. You could obviously export the leather as well, which is only 6, so you don't have that additional step. But I do think it is really worth it. If you've got a rich wild animal deposit, you can definitely work that extra and use that leather and those hides to make shoes and then have a really nice income. And additionally for warbows, if you're getting a lot of wood and planks, you can use that surplus to make those. So it's definitely really good income. You'll need to have a Fletcher's workshop, which costs 4 planks, but it's definitely worth it. So you may be using your trading post really effectively and making some money, but one thing to really keep in mind if you want to maximize your trading potential in Manor Lords is using this little building here, the pack station. So the pack station allows you to trade between different regions that you control. So here you can select the different regions. I currently control all of these regions, and you can choose which resources that you want to send and which you want to receive. So we're currently trading yarn and we're receiving mail armor. So the barter value simply states 0.5x. So because yarn is at a lower value, we will have to provide double the amount of yarn than we will receive mail armor. So if we did something that's a bit more similar like flour, it changes to 1.3x. So we'll be giving a smaller amount of yarn and we'll be receiving more flour. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're picking which things you want to send and receive and maximize the trade between regions. So next up, something to keep in mind are artisans. So when you're using the backyard extensions for your burgage plots, there's a variety of different things that you can pick. So things like the vegetable patch, chicken coop, goats, and orchard, all of those are going to just be non-artisans. They can just do that and they should scale with the number of families that you have in there. However, these other ones that you can unlock through development points, for example, bakery, or if you want a tailor's, it will convert all inhabitants in that building into artisans. Therefore, if you have 2 families living in there and you convert all of them to artisans, you won't have them available to work and do other things. So you'll completely lose them from being able to set them to work somewhere. Just something to keep in mind. Maybe you are struggling and you actually don't have many families to distribute to for all the work that's needed. You don't want to start making artisans if you don't have enough people. Build more burgage plots, have enough unassigned people before you start building out additional artisans. So just something to keep in mind. And another really handy tip is to make sure that you pause your artisans. So when you get a bit further into the game, you can have quite a few artisans producing different things. I highly recommend that if they are overproducing things, you can see here we have 456 small shields. We have 2 options here. We can either let them continue producing more shields and maybe we sell those and make some profit, or we should actually just pause this artisan so that they are not wasting the resources that we could be using for something else. Another really useful tip to maximize your impact on the battlefield is to upgrade your retinue capacity and upgrade your retinue armor. So if we go to the manor and we go to the castle planner, you can see that we have created this garrison tower here, and that allows us to increase our retinue size by 12 up to 24. So you can only do this once per region, but you should absolutely do this if you want to maximize your retinue on the battlefield. And if we go to this retinue and retinue customization, you can see that these guys are all fully upgraded. However, if we go to our other retinue and go to that screen, let's buy a couple, you can see that we have some armor upgrades. So we can upgrade this armor using an import, which costs 34, or we can use it using buy locally, which costs 17. We don't currently have that available, so we would have to go with this one if we wanted to upgrade that. We click on that, then he's got upgraded armor and he's going to be a lot more effective on the battlefield. So if you can do this for all 24 of your retinue per region, they're going to have a huge impact on the battlefield. They'll be really tanky, and it'll be a lot easier for you to succeed against Hildebolt. So the next thing to keep in mind are tithes and taxes. So if we head on over to our manor and we go to the taxes tab, there are a bunch of things in here. Only 2 of these are currently active in the game at the moment, land tax and tithe. So land tax generally at 10%, I have found, is if you have that in most of your regions, it's generally enough to keep it up and have a little bit extra for the king's tax. And that just gives you a little bit of extra money for your treasury. And the tithe gives additional food to the church in return for influence. So if you need to get additional influence to claim new territories, tithe is one way that you can do that. Do keep in mind that the higher your taxes, the more approval you will lose. So if we put this up to 30%, we're going to lose a significant amount of approval. So I tend to just keep it around 10 to 15%. Next up is a tip around creating and setting work areas. So your logging camps and your forester huts are probably going to be living pretty close together. And something really useful to have is just setting the work area. So if you go over to the advanced tab, you can limit a work area. If you, for example, you don't want to have these guys cutting down trees where your wild animal deposit is. So you can just set this to a single place. If you hold control and then scroll, you can increase this work area to wherever you want. So for example, if we would just want it there, then we can set that. But we can also set our forester hut to a similar work area. So they are planting trees as well. So you can get really, really good coverage. I didn't realize this until honestly yesterday. And I haven't been doing this in my whole playthrough. I've just been using this tiny, I think what's the basic size? It's like this size. And it really limits you, and that's why this is looking like this, and it's very, very small. So definitely make the most of it. It's super, super useful for forester huts and for logging camps. Another really good tip is to use crop rotation, and use that crop rotation to fallow your field. So what this does is just regenerates all types of fertility. You won't be growing anything in that field for that season. So generally it's best just to have a lot of different fields and then just rotate which one per season that you're going to fallow. If the fertility is too low, then you can obviously fallow it for a little bit longer, but generally I found that 1 season is enough. Next up are development points. More specifically, spend your development points wisely. So right now I am in Immenroith, I am a large town, and I have reached maximum settlement capacity. And we have spent all of our development points. So you get a total of 6 at the moment to spend in whatever you like with whatever is unlocked. I certainly made the mistake of picking things I probably wouldn't pick a second time around just because I was curious. I didn't know how many points that you would actually get. If you know that you have 6, you should plan for 6. And you should also think, actually, I don't need to spend all of these because I can spend my development points differently in different towns. So, for example, I've branched out into a lot of different areas in this town. If we go over to Nuslor region, I have gone very specifically into armor making all the way down into master armor making because this region has a rich deposit of iron and we really wanted this to power our war machine. Definitely be very calculated and think through how you want to spend your development points. If you want to have a farming region, definitely go up into farming. It's incredibly useful. Charcoal kiln, unlocking that is also just generally quite useful. I didn't do it in this region, but you can obviously trade in between regions, so you can think about those dynamics as well. If you do want to go into more foraging and less farming, maybe you don't have very fertile land, you can also go into these. I think these 3 specifically are very, very good as well. There's also things like unlocking the apiary and unlocking the apple orchard. I'm not a huge fan of the apiary, to be honest. I don't feel like, given that we only have 6 development points to spend, I don't think it's the most worthwhile one. I did do it in the original one, and I feel like that was my mistake. I would rather have spent that somewhere else. So just keep in mind where you want to spend these. Have a plan ahead of time for each region that you go into, and you'll get the most out of these, even if there are only 6 to spend. And the next thing I want to talk about are apple trees and orchards. So if you spend a development point in orchardry, you can unlock a backyard extension that allows you to grow apple trees. This is a really good extra way to get some additional food variation for your markets. The thing to keep in mind is that it will take at least 3 years before your apple trees are harvestable, so you won't see any immediate benefit. But once that time is up, you'll benefit from the food variety and extra food income. Your families will be harvesting these around September, so do keep that in mind for when you can expect this food to come online. And that's it for this top 10 advanced tips and tricks guide for Manor Lords. If you do like the video, please do give it a like and a subscribe, and lots more guides to come. Do check out the other guides that I do already have, and I hope to see you in the next one.